and welcome to Bite Me, a new Buffy podcast hosted by me, Martyn, and my good friend Joe Ford. Joe, how you doing?
I am doing wonderfully. I'm about to embark on an adventure of a lifetime, talking about one of my favourite TV shows with you. I'm wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, good. It's a new day, it's a new podcast, and it's one I'm surprised I haven't done before, because Buffy's my Doctor Who. I didn't grow up with Doctor Who, but I was 16 when Buffy started, and I was 23 when it finished. So I was the exact same age as the characters in the show, so I progressed with them. I started college when they did. I left school. Well, actually, no, they left school at 18, so I was a little bit ahead of them. But yeah, I just love Buffy, and whenever anyone mentions the Master, my first thought is Buffy. It's never Doctor Who. So
you think about Metcalf, not Ainley.
Yeah, exactly. So how did you discover Buffy?
So I came into Buffy now, don't get me wrong, I really love the first season and a half of Buffy, but I think where it went from being a good show to being a great show was the two-parter in the middle of season 2, where, spoilers, Angel turns bad,
yes.
Right? And that episode went out and everyone was talking about it. This show was called Buffy the Vampire Slayer, for God's sake. I wasn't going to watch that shit. It sounded like some terrible old B movie. And then I watched that was repeated that week, and I watched it. I was like, bloody hell, this is good. Then I call the second episode, the one with the judge and her with the bazooka in the mall and all of that. I'm like, this is the best TV I've ever seen. It actually, for me, somebody who was sort of in the process of studying television at the time, I was like, this is a new dawn for television. Yeah, we're doing something that has never been done this well before. And then I watched that second half of the second series, which is still one of my favorite run of episodes. And that was it. It got hooked into me. Then I loved the characters. They broke my heart on a regular basis. Alison Hannigan, you need to pay for my therapy because you took me to some very dark places in those last few years. My biggest in for any television show is always the characters. It's never really the concept. And if the characters get their hooks into me, I'll go on the ride, no matter how good, bad, or indifferent the storytelling is. Fortunately, the storytelling was frequently excellent as well.
Yeah. I didn't discover it until series 2, actually. I had heard it was on, but I had seen the 1992 movie. And I remember thinking, why the fuck are they making a TV series of this shit film? But what I didn't realize is the first series is based on the original screenplay.
Is that right?
Yeah, so what happened is Joss Whedon wrote the film, and then it got butchered by producers and editors, and obviously it was his first project. So, and there's 2 people involved with Buffy. There's 2 producers. I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but they've got nothing to do with the TV series. They got nothing to do with Angel, but they get a check every time an episode plays because they brought the movie rights.
Oh, well,
and
that was a savvy move, wasn't it?
They are the people that stopped there being a Giles spin-off.
No, the British Giles spin-off they were going to do over here.
Yeah, like the BBC had costed it, they'd budgeted it, they'd cast it, they'd built sets, and then these 2 producers from the film wanted an extra like 10 grand. And the BBC were like, we can't.
Those people.
We can't pay
Excuse
that.
my language.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of understand it. Like, if you own this property that you think is viable, why wouldn't you try and get all you can get for it? But a Giles spin-off I would have loved.
Well, and I'm sure you and I will talk about Angel in due course. And I'm wondering if eventually we'll just skip over and do the 2 alongside each other, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll say up front, I didn't have the same reaction to Angel as I did to Buffy, which is unusual because I'm a massive Star Trek fan, and when Star Trek spun off into a darker, more sort of twisted version in DS9, I adored it. When they did Angel, which did feel like a more grounded, less sort of supernaturally and quite raw series, I sort of pushed against it a bit. I'll be really interested to go back and watch that now, though, given the wealth of television that's come since, and to see what that's got to offer. I'm wondering if I might quite like it now. I'm surprised there wasn't more spin-offs because this was a phenomenon, wasn't it? Like this, initially, I think people were a bit skeptical. Then people got on board, and then come sort of series 3, 4, and 5, this was the hottest property, I think, coming out of WB.
There was going to be a Faith one at one point, but then Eliza Dushku turned it down to do True Calling, which lasted one series.
Yeah.
And then there was going to be a Spike movie, but they just couldn't get the budget sorted out. And now the cast have all kind of aged out of it. I guess the only way you could really do it now is a complete reboot. Or, I don't know, you bring in a new Slayer and you have the original characters pop up. But given what's come out about Joss Whedon being a bit of a bully and a bit of a prick recently, I doubt that's ever going to happen. But saying that, Disney do own the TV rights. So something is going to happen with it at some point.
What's strange about Buffy, I think, is given how, and I genuinely think, and we'll discuss this as we go through the episodes, it revolutionized television in a lot of different ways.
Oh, absolutely.
Is how now it isn't really spoken about too much alongside sort of the greats of the past. And I think like the X-Files gets tarred with that brush as well. The X-Files, when it was on, was the biggest show on television. Now people sort of look back on it and it's a bit of an embarrassment that it ran on a bit too long. But I think it's worth remembering that when this show was on, it was on everybody's lips. This was like the water cooler show. I think they redefined the cliffhanger on everybody's lips that you talked about for the week until the next one. And I'm talking about cliffhangers like Angel getting his soul back, or that one where Giles turns up towards the end of series 6 and pushes Willow aside with the magic and stuff like that, where we were all like, my God, I cannot wait until the next episode. Yeah, this was a phenomenon.
Without Buffy, you don't get The Sopranos, because I think Buffy showed what TV could be when it was well written and you had well-rounded characters. It kind of reminds me how, Blade came along and showed what comic book movies could be, and then the X-Men did it, and now all anyone remembers is the X-Men is responsible for what we have now, and a lot of people just remember what The Sopranos did. I think that's a very similar path that these two franchises have gone down. I wanted to be Angel so badly when I was like 17. The reason I've got no hair now is probably all the product I used to put in it. I used to what an insufferable prick. I used to sit in the dark because he did. I used to just not say anything. I used to not smile. I had the leather coat because I thought this is what girls like.
Do you know who I wanted to be?
Yeah, go on.
I wanted to be Xander so badly, the goofy, funny sidekick. And, in the sort of later seasons where he suddenly becomes very eloquent about his feelings and sort of very empathic to the people around him. Just for the entire run, I was a massive Nicholas Brendan stan. And I'm sorry, you are going to have to put up with me because this has got some of the hottest men I've ever seen on television. So you are going to have to put up with me admiring them quite a lot. And Nicholas Brendan in series 1 and 2, man, that was a big crush at the time.
I'll bet.
Perfect age for me. Those sort of floppy curtains that every boy band had in the 90s.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
He's a good-looking man, but he's not... I know Ryan Reynolds auditioned, and I think Ryan Reynolds is a bit too Hollywood good-looking, whereas Nicholas Brendan, and I mean this as a compliment, he's everyday handsome. So, you could imagine him working in a shop. You wouldn't be surprised if you went in a shop and there was a guy that looked like him there, but if you went in a shop and there's a guy that looked like Ryan Reynolds, you'd be like, mate, you shouldn't be in here.
I mean, in the same breath, though, I will say that you do have Sarah Michelle Gellar, Alison Hannigan, Elijah Dushku. I could go on. You've got some of the most stunningly beautiful women that television ever gave us. What I thought was really bold with some of this casting, especially with Nicholas Brendan and David Boreanaz, is they were relative unknowns.
Yeah.
They've done very little work. So there was every chance that that acting could have bombed. And actually what they did was create fantastically memorable characters and delivered time and time again. I mean, they gave Boreanaz his own show about 3 times over.
He's consistently worked since. Like, there isn't a gap in his IMDb. Like, he went from Buffy to Angel to Bones, and now I think he's in an SAS type Navy SEAL show that's been going for like 6 years. Like,
and do you know what? He makes me sick. He's like 50 now, and he's still hot as hell. Bastard.
Yeah, it kind of annoys me as well. He could still play Angel, I reckon.
Yeah, he could. Give him the leather jacket.
Yeah.
Do you know what I think the biggest surprise is, though, in Buffy? And I can't wait to look at her journey. That's Alison Hannigan. Because this show is called Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but for me, it's Willow's journey that really affected me in this run.
Yeah.
And it surprises me knowing that she went off to do movies, that they grabbed her for a sitcom, that she made a fortune after she left Buffy, because she's such a talent.
Yeah, a lot of people from Buffy have done really well. There's very few people in it that you're like, yeah, this is your biggest thing. I mean, Nicholas Brendan.
I think Brendan went to prison a few times.
He's had his demons.
Yeah, well, don't we all?
Yeah, I wish him all the best. Like, I hope he gets clean and sorts himself out. But yeah, like if I showed a picture of David Boreanaz to my mum, she would know him from Bones. And I think that's the big tell that he's not defined by Buffy or Angel. And what both shows did really well is character evolution. So I hated Wesley on Buffy. I thought Wesley was just this sniveling little fucking prick, and I nothing to do with him. I hated him. But where he ends in Angel is so far removed from where he starts that you're like, yeah, I love this character. I love this evolution. How do you feel about that?
I say it, but even he was really hot at the end. They gave him a bit of scruff, didn't they?
Yeah,
Suddenly he knew all the kung fu moves like everybody else.
He was going to the gym.
Yeah. I think the only character in the entire run of Buffy and Angel, there's two characters that didn't really gel for me. One was Riley, Buffy's boyfriend in series 4, and I felt like that was a missed opportunity. They could have worked really well, but something didn't stick with the writing and the performance. And the other one is Connor from Angel's son, who they just cast somebody very terrible, but in the role. But never mind.
I think he was inexperienced because he's gone on to actually be a really good actor now, Connor. He's in Mad Men, and he's really good in Mad Men. He plays like an advertising kind of boss. And
maybe it was the writing then. Or maybe it was just the wrong time.
I think he was like 17 at the time, so maybe just inexperienced.
But I think another thing Buffy absolutely mastered was the secondary characters, like Joyce Summers, who was just a delight. And I'm going to talk about what happens with her in series 5 until we get there. But Joss Whedon truly broke my heart there. And characters like Harmony, who's so funny. And then in the later years, do you remember Clem with the funky ears? Like they just got all of that so right. And I feel like it's the first show that I watched that was as sort of emotionally introspective as it is. And I think that was a massive strength. I do think in season 6, which is actually one of my favourites for a lot of reasons, I think it went a bit too far and there was a bit too much therapy going on that year and got in the way of the storytelling a little bit. But on the whole, sort of how they probe these characters psychologically throughout the run. And I'm making it sound dry as dust there. The biggest strength of Buffy is the humour. I think it's just such a funny show. It's got fast and witty dialogue. It's got great character humour. It's got they do all those wonderful scenes all the time with two sort of culturally different characters going at each other, the vampire and the human or something like that. The popular girl and the unpopular girl, and all this stuff. All these clashes are so funny when they do it. I just think it is such a genuinely funny genre TV show. And I know other shows that have tried to be funny and sort of bomb. I mean, do you ever watch Charmed, which is kind of doing the same thing, but it's a bit straight-laced and a bit too, I don't know what the right word is. Bland. Maybe that's the right word.
Yeah, I never got into Charmed, but interestingly, my 11-year-old daughter has just started watching it and she loves it. And I keep telling her, you need to watch Buffy.
I've never been an 11-year-old girl, so I can't possibly criticise there then.
But yeah, she loves it. Have you ever delved into the expanded media like the comics?
Not at all. And this is the other thing I'm looking forward to doing as we go, because I know there's a lot of post-season 7 Buffy, isn't there?
Yeah.
Tell me about it then.
I think they go on till series 12 in the comics. Dawn becomes a giant. Buffy becomes gay.
Oh.
And it gets a bit convoluted. And now with Boom Studios, they've done a complete reboot. It's set in modern times. They used like the actors' appearances from the show in the comics. So it's kind of weird seeing Buffy hold an iPhone.
Right.
But once you get around that, it's a really interesting storytelling device. And Angel's got his own range. And they changed the characters. So like Anya's always been the magic shop owner. Willow's gay from the get-go and she's got a girlfriend. Giles is with Olivia, that woman who would come
from season 4,
he's with her. Jenny Calendar's there. Xander becomes a half vampire. Drusilla turns him, but he doesn't feed on humans, so he's kind of like this half vampire.
So they effectively rewrote the show.
Yeah, but they do it really well. And like Principal Wood is a teenager now with them, and he's he's working for the Watchers Council, trying to get information on Giles and Buffy. And it's a really interesting modern twist on how it goes. But they also have comics set in the future of that continuity where Buffy's the last vampire slayer, and it's her and Spike taking down all the remaining vampires, and that's quite interesting as well.
You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of Doctor Who. You remember Doctor Who when it came off the air in '89, and the fans just wouldn't let it go. Clearly, the Buffy fans are exactly the same as well. You know, they're creative people, and they're sort of driving the franchise on in different ways. I know there's been books as well. I bet there's been other things they've explored too. Are there Buffy conventions?
Oh yeah, they do Buffy cons. I mean, there's a Spike book out next month, so it still goes.
How could I forget about Spike? Oh. You're in for some trouble when he comes along. He might be my favourite character in the entire run.
He could have handled his own spin-off.
Oh, but easily. And in fact, when he skipped over to Torchwood, which is a Doctor Who spin-off, that was, I think, a big acknowledgement of how much Buffy... the influence Buffy had on the modernised Doctor Who that came back in 2005. And Anthony Head as the villain in the school reunion and all of that. Just the way they tell the stories these days, the arcs, all of it. I think a lot of that owes its debt to Buffy.
Oh, yeah. Even Russell T Davies has been outspoken about this, that Buffy was a huge influence and that Angel was a huge influence on Torchwood.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, yeah, you can see that, can't you?
Yeah, and there's even episodes that are just straight up rip-offs of Angel in Torchwood.
But also as well, I think if you look across the run of Buffy, the best episodes, and that's a contentious subject because it's subjective, isn't it? What you think is the best episodes. But like some of the accepted best episodes, Once More with Feeling, The Body, The Gift, things like that. I don't think you disagree with me to say that is some of the best television we've ever had.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's up there with like Breaking Bad. It's up there with The Sopranos. And I don't think like I said earlier, I don't think we get any of those shows now, any of that storytelling narrative without Buffy.
And I don't think we get it with the consistency that Buffy churned it out either. But a weak Buffy episode is better than most average TV shows that are being churned out these days. I would quite like to touch on just really briefly, the Joss Whedon thing, because obviously we're going to talk about him a lot because he's stamped all over this show. I in no way endorse any kind of workplace bullying. And if that was going on, then that is troubling and it should be dealt with. What I will say about Joss Whedon is he is an extremely talented man and he brought all of his talents to this show and created some magic. And so I'm very much going to be separating what he's been accused of and the output that we're going to be critiquing. Because I don't think you and I could do this podcast if we were sort of delving into that all the time. It would be a bit worrying.
We'll touch on it when it's relevant, but yeah, I think we should separate art from artist here. He did create a lot of great work, and I don't agree with workplace bullying. I'd be interested because he's never really given his side of it. I'd be interested to hear his side and how much of it was just that was the culture of TV at the time. I mean, when I interviewed Tom Lenk, he said there was a number of people on the set that he didn't feel like he could come out to. And they were like, they were like people that worked on like lighting or stuff like that because he didn't feel safe to. I'd be interested to know how much of that is just, it was that period in television. But then again, Ray Fisher made some allegations about the Justice League in 2017.
Yeah.
So maybe it's still going on, but until we get Joss,
I think it's a troubling industry. I think if you are a creative person, there is a temperament there that goes with it, and you're all enclosed in a set together, and sometimes things go wrong. And I bet we know from Doctor Who and other shows that there could be toxic environments. It happens. It shouldn't, but it does.
Yeah.
You did remind me then, though. How could I possibly forget Andrew? who's one of the best characters of the later seasons,
Yeah.
who came in, and I was so unimpressed in his first couple of episodes, going, "Oh God, he's a stereotypical geek. Are we really doing this? Are these really the villains?" And then they just had a way of taking like stereotypes, subverting them, and then turning them into amazing characters. One of my favorite Buffy episodes is The Storyteller in season 7, which is Andrew's episode. It's amazing.
Isn't that Jonathan? Oh no, Andrew.
Andrew, Tom Legg's character. Yeah, he's brilliant. Oh no, I think Jonathan is brilliant throughout. I think they captured that sort of picked upon, mousy school kid just brilliantly.
Well, he auditioned to be Xander.
Yeah, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, I could kind of see it. I think Xander would have been done after the first series then, if they played him. I could see him working for like a series.
Can I ask you a question? Because I believe that you've watched the unaired pilot.
I have, I watched it last night.
So could you please inform me then, because I saw it a long time ago. All I remember was the Willow was different, very different, but I don't remember much else about it. It was basically like a showreel version of the pilot.
Yeah, so Joss Whedon funded it himself, and he filmed it on a camcorder, which is very evident. There's a different Willow and a different Principal Flutie. Principal Flutie in this is played by Stephen Tobolsky, I think is his name. He's Ned Ryerson in Groundhog Day. So he's the one that goes, "Oh, it's a doozy," and he's playing it a bit more comedically in the pilot. But the essence of the first episode is there. There's no angel, there's no master, but the essence is there. It's a bit more self-referential. There's a Nosferatu poster up that the film club are putting up, and then Buffy throws a stake for it. It's like a nearly done cake. Like it's nearly there.
It's no wonder that first episode is as strong as it is, because it's basically had 2 runs. He's had two sort of attempts before creating Welcome to the Hellmouth. So no wonder it's as polished as it is.
Fox were very against the title, and
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
They begged him to change it because they thought it was.
So was I. I didn't give it a chance for a season and a half on the strength of the title.
Same. Well, it's because of the association with the film for me. I was like, this can't be good, and then I learned it was by the same writer. And I didn't know how producers and stuff changed films back then, so I was just like, it's going to be shit.
Well, do you know what I did like in that movie, though, was Donald Sutherland.
Yes.
I thought he was great.
Going back and watching it, there's kind of like this camp, kind of fun value to it, and the way Paul Rubens dies, it's kind of funny.
Very over the top. That sort of thing, you and me.
I like it now, but at the time, when I was a cool little teenager trying to be edgy, it wasn't the film for me.
As a blueprint for the series, I think it sort of fails completely. And I know it was never intended to be, because I feel like the series is character first, with the movie is like being cool first, but in that spectacular sort of early 90s way that's just not cool at all. It's a bit embarrassing to watch, but it's sort of like a cult classic now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of a soft prequel to the series. There's elements they take, like she doesn't burn down the gym in the movie, so I guess that was a later adventure.
Let's call it a curiosity.
Okay, Joe, now we've given the audience our Buffy bona fides, why don't we just jump straight into Welcome to the Hellmouth?
In a town where darkness hides its face, a slayer rises, embracing her destined grace. Buffy Summers, young and bold, her calling's power she'll fiercely hold. Sunnydale, a quaint facade. Beneath it lies a world that's flawed. Vampires lurk and demons dwell, but Buffy's strength will break their spell. Arriving at a new school's door, she seeks solace and nothing more. But destiny calls, she can't evade. A watcher's guidance, a bond was made. Together they stand, facing the night, fighting evil with all their might. With friends by her side, united they stand. In the battle against darkness, they'll withstand. In every dusk and every dawn, the Slayer's courage will be drawn. The first episode sets the stage for Buffy's journey, a timeless page.
You didn't discover this until series 2. I was the same. So when I went back, a lot of twists in this episode I already knew. So how did you find this episode when you first saw it?
I thought this was really confident. And actually, I think, apart from the finale and Angel, I think this might be the strongest episode of the season, the first episode. Like, it just hits the ground running. It's so confident. A lot of shows take about 2 seasons to get halfway this confident, whereas Buffy just knows what it's doing right from the off.
Yeah, I think having his experiences on the film and then making that pre-pilot really helped Joss Whedon narrow down what he wanted to do with the series. Shall we talk casting?
Let's talk casting.
Yeah.
Who do you want to talk about first?
So, Sarah Michelle Gellar originally auditioned to be Cordelia.
Yeah, I learned that yesterday. I just can't see it somehow. I mean, she'd be great because she's a great actress, and I've seen her in stuff like Cruel Intentions, where she plays the bitch brilliantly. But can you imagine anyone else playing Buffy the Vampire Slayer now?
No. Well, Katie Holmes very nearly got the job.
Really?
Yeah, she was like the network's top choice, but then they found out she was only 17.
Right.
So as she was a minor, she couldn't work nights, and there were a limited number of hours she could work. So they were like, it's just too complex. And then I think a year later, she hit 18 and got Dawson's Creek. So it turned out pretty well for her.
She went on to have a spectacular success with. So things worked out well for her. Do you know, the thing I hear people say about Sarah Michelle Gellar the most, and that's Alison Hannigan, Joss Whedon, all the people that worked for her all those years, was how hard she worked, how well prepared she was, how she was on the set the longest, how she never complained once. Like, she sounds like the quintessential professional.
Yeah.
But alongside that, she's just a bloody good actress as well, and did like astonishing things with this part. So I think that they found the right fit with Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think she was 21, 22 when she did this. Surprisingly, I learned Charisma Carpenter was 26.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when she was cast as Cordelia.
A lot younger than that. Have you seen much of Sarah Michelle Gellar's other work?
Scooby-Doo. Yeah, Cruel Intentions. Cruel Intentions. When I was 17, I watched a certain scene on DVD over and over and over.
There was this period in the 90s though, where she was everywhere, right? Do you remember I Know What You Did Last Summer and stuff like that? You know, she was in all the sort of the chick flicks. And I've seen, what was that show that she did where she was the twins that ran for 2 years? Was
it All My Children?
It was called
All My Children. She was in a soap opera.
Maybe no. There was this sort of weird twisted where she had a doppelganger, and it was a very weird drama.
Oh,
do you know which one I'm talking about?
Yes, and she also played Robin Williams' daughter in something.
Yeah, and she was also in the Burger King commercials when she was a little girl, and as cute as a button, may I say. So I mean, okay, I'll say from the off, I don't think anyone is miscast in this show. But I think the best casting they ever did was Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Absolutely. So Joss Whedon said when he was writing the character of Angel that he knew this was going to be a character that could go on to have his own show, or a character that could disappear within 7 episodes. And he said it all depended on who they cast. And the casting agent has gone on record as saying it was the hardest casting she's ever had, because you had to hire this guy who was good looking, but not so good looking men didn't like him. And then, and she was basically driving home one day thinking how impossible it was. And she stumbled across David Boreanaz walking his dog.
I hear that Joss Whedon needed convincing about David Boreanaz, and there were several people in the room, several ladies, that basically started perspiring the second he walked in, and they went, well, you're casting him. It's got to be him. He's hot as hell. I think Boreanaz has an element of vulnerability about him that he brings to the role, which is essential to Angel. I've actually been fairly critical of him in the past. Certainly, I've reviewed all of Buffy on one of my websites, and I didn't really rate him at the time. As I was watching this for this podcast, I'm like, what were you talking about, Joe? He's really great. Like, he somehow manages to be unassuming and have presence at the same time. And that's a fine line to walk.
Yeah. And he is a character that you are intrigued by him. You're like, how does he know these vampires? What's the story? Darla, I had a huge crush on Julie Benz when I first watched this. Oh,
because I can't break away from Julie Benz in Dexter.
Yes.
Do you remember when she was in Dexter as this
Rita?
Lovely sort of. She was in an abusive relationship, and then Dexter ended up in a, and then she got murdered horribly in season 5. Every time I see her in Buffy now, I'm like, oh no, remember when she was dead in the bath in Dexter?
She was so good at
She is great. I mean, that's how they do the premise of the show in this, isn't it? It's her at the beginning in the corridor turning into a vampire, the innocent girl that's about to be preying upon the person. Great.
Well, yeah, it was Joss Whedon's entire premise for Buffy was to subvert the old horror genres. So normally you'd have the blonde girl who's going in there and she gets attacked. And his idea was, what if she turned around and beat the shit out of the monsters?
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
And yeah.
Do you remember the bit in Angel where she had the machine gun and they were strobe lighting her and she was like just blowing the shit out of that room?
Yeah.
Oh, I think I had a crush on her at that point.
It's interesting to see Xander skateboard in this episode.
I don't think we ever see that again.
We don't. He carries it, but yeah, he was meant to skateboard in every episode. However, the logistics of filming someone skateboard across a path with extras in the background and different camera angles and resetting it was just deemed too much work.
It's a tracking shot in this one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I remember. Maybe that's just too expensive. The thing I gleaned from the commentary was that this was done on the cheap and they had to do a lot of pickups later on. They were doing this in a hurry with not much money. So, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, the scene with Buffy and Giles in the library, that was shot at the same time as the finale. Yeah, they went back.
And I knew that. So when I was watching it, I was like, how do they marry these scenes up with what they've already shot? Because there's some bits that they've already shot and there's some bits they've shot later. Actually, it's peerless. You can't really tell.
Yeah, you can't tell. Yeah. Did you know who Anthony Stewart Head was at the time? He was big for like the Kenko coffee adverts.
I did. My mum was a huge fan of those adverts, you know. I think she was more excited about the adverts than she was about Corrie, because they usually aired when Coronation Street was on, which is a British soap for anybody that doesn't know, a very long-running one. Oh, have you gone back and watched those adverts now, though?
No, I've never rewatched them.
Bugger me, Martyn. It's like watching 60s Star Trek. They've got this sort of fuzzy lens on the woman, and they're sort of giving each other moon eyes over the Kenko or whatever it is. It's just interminable. I remember him from the pilot episode of Jonathan Creek when he played Adam Klaus.
Sure.
And thinking, wow, this is a memorable actor. And then they recast him, obviously, when he came over to do Buffy, almost immediately after he did that, for Stuart Milligan. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that I watched Buffy. I was like, oh, that's what he went to do. Actually, he got a better gig.
Yeah, that makes sense. This is one of the strongest first episodes of any TV series. And it's hard to say that because episode 1 is never normally anyone's favorite episode of anything, because that's the setup, that's the premise.
We've got to be introduced to all of those key players in a way that doesn't feel sort of functional, you know. So having her come to a new school gives us a way of, we're following her. It's a day in the life of Buffy Summers at Sunnydale High for the first day. So we get to meet the principal, we get to meet, you know, the school bully, we get to meet all of the friends to be, we get to meet the librarian. It's very well done in that respect. That's a good approach to take.
Yeah, and interestingly, Joss Whedon didn't want to show her parents at all originally.
No, I bet when Christine Sutherland came in, he's like, no, we're gonna write her up.
No, he just decided it would be too awkward to just never have a parent present. So he decided that if he made the parents divorced, then you only had one parent to worry about. And that's why they divorced.
Having her come from a broken home, that automatically puts our sympathies with Buffy, doesn't it? But don't you just love how Joyce is written here? There's a very responsible take on the adults in this, because a lot of the time you find in kids or teen TV shows, the parents are the ones that are just coming down hard on the kids all the time, and we don't like them. The adults in Buffy, that's Giles and that's Joyce, I find them very likable. That was such a savvy move, because it means we go on journeys with those characters as well as we go along. And Joyce being that person who's in the dark for like a season, or nearly 2 whole seasons, of just going, you know, why are you coming home covered in blood? You know, you're a very bad daughter. Then they get to do the reveal, and then they do so many fun things with her after that. So I think including Buffy's mum, while it initially might have appeared to be a bit like, oh, we're doing this, are we? You know, the annoying mum. It just bared fruit down the line so much.
Yeah, and interestingly, you only ever see Willow's mum once.
Is that in Gingerbread? Is
Yeah.
that the one where they try and burn her as a witch?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
And I think
Yeah.
Xander's parents show up once or twice. They're not in it a lot.
We hear Xander's parents upstairs when he's in the basement, like rowing all the time, don't they?
Yeah, yeah.
And he sort of goes, "Oh, come on, you, let's have sex and we'll drown him out," you know?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to really be critical of this episode because I love kind of everything about it. But yeah, this is what I think of when I hear the word the Master. I think of Metcalf. I don't think of Doctor Who.
What do you think about his? Because he's the cliffhanger to this episode, isn't he? When he
Yeah.
comes rising up out of the blood. I think that's the only CG shot in this.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah, Whedon was saying that he was supposed to come out covered in blood. They wanted it to be really sort of gothic and horrific, but unfortunately, and originally the studio were like, "Well, we'll do it. We'll have him come out of a vat of blood." And then they were like, "No, what if this goes right? We haven't got enough money to do it again. If he looks stupid, we've got to use it." So they did the CGI shot. But man, what a villain, Martyn! What a villain!
I was always disappointed, jumping ahead, that he's only a one series villain.
Well, that's the Buffy way, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose so. The only
person that got more was Spike.
Yeah, and that's just, I think Spike was cool.
Yeah, very cool. Cool and hot. So we'll keep reminding you of that.
Do you like Principal Flutie?
Oh, I really like Principal Flutie, and obviously they replace him with the fabulous Armand Schumann as the evil Principal Snyder, who I think is a more memorable character just because he's such an arsehole. But don't you just love Flutie straight away?
Oh, it's
Buffy at Sunnydale. I believe in second chances. And he tears up her record.
I just love that he just catches a glimpse of it on the corner of his eye, and he's like burnt down, and he starts just taping it.
Yeah. Oh, I can't believe what they do to him later in this season.
Yeah.
That was the first time when I was like, yeah, this is a bit different.
So let's talk a little bit about Alison Hannigan here. She's this very stereotypical geek.
What is she wearing? Her mum picks it out for her, I believe.
Yeah, you'd have to, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but very quickly she stops wearing that kind of stuff, doesn't she? It's quirky, it's a bit eccentric, her clothes, but it is cool, like the Buffy cool.
Well, yeah, that's Buffy's influence on her, and the way I read it is that Buffy's actively trying not to hang around with the popular kids anymore. She had that life in LA and she doesn't want it anymore.
And that turns out to be a very smart move going ahead.
Yeah.
Although I gotta say, I think the most memorable character in this is Cordelia. Like some of her lines in the pilot, what is it? Excuse me, who even gave you permission to exist? Some of those lines are gold, and Charisma Carpenter delivers them beautifully. But that's why we feel for Willow, isn't it? Because she's just so fucking horrible to her all the time.
Yeah. Cordelia's evolution is really good throughout both shows, because she later goes on to Angel.
I don't really know much about her evolution in Angel.
Okay.
But certainly in Buffy.
Yeah, I won't spoil it.
Okay.
So Anthony Stewart Head here, I just love the way he plonks the book down on the counter. He's like, yeah, I know what you're after. Boom, Vampira. What if you got the wrong student?
Yeah. Oh, how embarrassing. Sorry. I think you wanted this textbook instead.
And I think this episode is the only time we see him in the bronze.
It could be, actually, yeah. I don't remember too many other times of him being in the bronze. What I do really like is the chemistry between Anthony Stewart Head and Sarah Michelle Gellar. And I think that's one of the major strengths of the show, that sort of immediate respect that they have for each other. And then he's almost like a surrogate dad figure for her, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely.
And there's just something so assuring about Anthony Stewart Head. I don't know what it is. And he's got a vulnerable side to him as well. But I just know if he was around, if Giles was around, it's going to be all right. Yeah, it's when he leaves in series 6. That's when the shit all hits the fan, isn't it? And everyone's lives falls apart.
That's true. We haven't mentioned Jesse.
No, who's that again? Oh yeah, the fella who dies.
Joss Whedon's initial plan was to have Jesse in the opening credits and to put him on all the promo material so that viewers would be really shocked when he died. But as I saw series 2 first and then came back to series 1, and he wasn't mentioned. I knew straight away he was going to die, but it was deemed, too expensive to put him in all that promo stuff. But Russell T Davies would later do this with Torchwood with Susie.
Of course he
Susie's
did,
in all those trailers.
They're very naughty because they do it with Amber Benson.
Yeah.
She gets one episode where she gets a credit in the title, and then they murder her at the end. Yeah.
And then you get fucking Kennedy coming in thinking she can replace her.
Oh, spoiler for about 5 years down the line of this podcast. What are the best moments in this episode for you? Like, what are your standout scenes in Welcome to the Hellmouth?
Oh, I think the Master coming up through the blood, that's really good. I remember that looking really good. It looks really ropey now, especially if you watch it on Disney Plus, where it's been like HD'd and, filtered. I love the moment when the Vampira book comes flying down. I love Joyce. My favorite standout moment is Principal Flutie retaping that transcript back up together. And there's deleted scenes from this episode where he's more involved.
Oh no, why did they cut him out? What's he up to?
I think it's just running time. No, it's like Buffy trying to get in to see the dead body before she goes in, sees him, and he has a conversation about counselling and stuff like that with her.
I think some of the standout scenes from Welcome to the Hellmouth feature possibly the scariest vampire we ever got in Brian Thompson.
Oh, he's so good.
Who, I don't know if you recall, he played the pilot in The X-Files, and that was my other big love of the 1990s. He was the alien shapeshifter that went round with the device, stabbing everyone in the back and bringing out this sort of acid blood. And man, he's scary. The end of this where he jumps down on Buffy and there's like the freeze frame on his face. I don't think Spike was ever scary.
No.
I think Angel was memorable, but I don't think he was scary in the horror sense. He was scary because he was murdering, the cast, and that's really horrible. I don't think they really get the villainous vampire right again after this. So it's actually a shame that he's written out in these two episodes. He's great. He's a really good character.
The actor comes back because he plays the judge in series 2.
Oh boy, does he! Mind you, he don't get to do a lot except get blown up, does he?
But I looked him up. He's an old guy because he's handsome, but also weird looking. Like,
do you know? I always used to walk around my mall thinking, do you know what? My mall's never as exciting as that episode of Buffy where she gets the bazooka out and blows up the judge. Oh dear! I feel like Joss Whedon's got a tick list of things, throughout that he really wants to do, and that was one of them. Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
As a pilot episode, do you think this, because I always consider the success of a pilot is whether you want to go on and watch more episodes. Does this work on those terms for you? If you were just watching this blind, not going back.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this does its job. There's very few pilots that I think are this strong. Being Humans, another vampire show. I mean, that's a very strong pilot. Yeah, I want to know more. I want to continue on this journey with these characters.
And is this doing enough to subvert the genre? Because obviously it's putting the helpless damsel in the role of the hero. Is this doing enough to make it different from stuff that's come before?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We get Darla killing that boy. Let me ask you, Joe, have you ever gone on a date with someone and wanted to take them back to your old high school?
My old high school?
Yeah.
No, my room all the time. But my old high school, no.
Because that's what makes me...
If someone suggested that I go into a darkened building with them on a first date, that would be an immediate red flag, all right?
Because, it's so weird that he takes Darla to his old school. I guess he says there's a great view from the gym roof that he wants to show her. So maybe you just get this really awe-inspiring landscape shot of Sunnydale. And that's another thing that's always tripped me up about Sunnydale is the geography. Like, it's a small town, but there's an airport. There's a university that's far enough away Buffy has to stay there and can't stay at home, but she gets home regularly. There's a castle.
A beach that we only see twice.
Yeah. There's a mansion.
There's a castle that we see once.
Yeah.
But they do have that great line in that where they go, do you know, I've never noticed there's an enormous castle in Sunnydale before,
I get maybe what the Hellmouth does is it kind of just shifts stuff around. And people don't notice because they're part of it. Maybe it's like, I get another RTD kind of influence is that he took the Hellmouth and made it the rift in time and space. in Cardiff. That is just the Hellmouth.
Well, and Joss Whedon said on the commentary that that was his catch-all explanation when he couldn't think of a good reason for the monster of the week to be in it. It's like, oh, the Hellmouth opened and this popped out, and that's a good premise because it just constantly generates stories, and then they have fun with it as well. Doesn't Giles say in one episode, oh, I think there's a Hellmouth in Indonesia or something like that, we'll go over there next. Okay, here's a question for you then. What do you think about how meta this show is? Because I feel like shows have touched upon breaking the fourth wall throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But in the 90s, this is where this becomes the standard. And I think Buffy does it better than most other shows. Like, do you mind the sort of knowing winks to the audience, like that castle line?
Oh, no, I love it. I love it.
If you're cheeky about something that is a cliche, you can get away with it. What do they call it? Hanging a lantern on it.
Yeah.
Like we know, this is a bit shit. Let's get on with the story.
Yeah, no, I'm all for that. And
as we go through this, I'm gonna highlight some of the best examples of that. Today, I think the best visual gag they ever do in Buffy is where in that episode where Cordelia falls on the spike. And then we cut to a funeral scene with everybody in, black gear, the swelling music, the camera spanning around, and then it just goes to the side, and it's Buffy and Willow just happening to walk past the funeral, going, "Oh, so Cordelia's going to be all right then?" Those sort of gags, it's just brilliant.
Oh, there's a great gag in this episode that I love, and that's the two girls in the locker room just before they discover the body. They're talking like, oh, what kind of name is Buffy anyway? Oh, hi, Aphrodisia.
Did you notice how much valley speed there was in this? I mean, I felt as if this was the closest that Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the TV series, ever got to Clueless. They're going, oh, pause, neg, stuff like
that. They were very influenced on the era they were in.
But they do tone that down, I think. There is always very sort of unique dialogue in Buffy, but I think Joss Whedon said, like, nobody could really understand what anyone was saying. So we made it so it was decipherable dialogue. Can we talk a little bit about the direction of this? Because it's Charles Martyn, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who directed, he already directed some X-Files before this. So he's sort of earned his chops in genre television because that's a show with a big budget. The thing that I really thought he pulled off in this, because the thing that Joss Whedon doesn't stop going on about in the commentary is how they had no money and how they only had one corridor for the high school. And what Charles Martyn manages to do in that, with the movement, the activity, the camera angles, to make it suggest like this was a big school and not just one tiny set. And throughout, like by all accounts, it's all filmed in a big warehouse somewhere. I don't know, it's California or somewhere. And the exterior of the Bronze?
Yeah.
That's the warehouse it's filmed in. So they had the door there into the Bronze, which is basically just from the exterior of the warehouse into the set. But I mean, what a savvy thing, because that absolutely suggests inside and outside. And throughout, if there was no money available for this pilot, I don't think it shows at all.
Yeah, no, direction is flawless. The production values are incredible for what it is, and the vampire makeup, it still holds up. It's very Lost Boys.
The only thing that improves, I think, is the dustings.
Yeah. Did you know every dusting cost $1 million?
What?
Yeah. At that time, with CGI budgets and what it took, every dusting was $1 million. That's why so often you'll see a stake to the side and you'll just hear the sound effect. And that was just to save money.
But there's episodes where she dusts about 5 people.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, it did become a big show and advertisers were attracted to it. So that helped when the budget went up. It'd probably be cheaper now. It'd just be an Adobe kind of filter that you put on probably. But yeah, the dusting effect still holds up, still looks good.
I think in terms of the direction, right, the scene that had to land was the first scene with Darla. And that's the scene where you're watching it and you think you know how this is going. And I think the cut to her turning around with the vampire makeup is a great shock moment. He gets that bang on.
Yeah. It's such a flawless episode.
I mean, and that's almost a boring way to start this, right? By saying, well, this is perfect and that's perfect. Because I'll show you what, we've got iRobot You Jane coming up and Teacher's Pet and episodes like this where we can have a bit of fun poking at the less successful aspects of the episodes.
Yeah.
But like, it's worth remembering this show started extremely well.
Yeah, it did. I think that's about all we can say about Welcome to the Hellmouth, is that we both liked it.
In the second episode, which is The Harvest, is that right?
Mm.
Yeah, I always think of it as one. I always think of it as just Welcome to the Hellmouth for the two. I actually think the direction's even better in the second half because that's far more action-oriented, isn't it? There's a lot more going on.
Yeah,
in that
well,
episode.
this is very much here's the characters, here's the location, here's the premise. Episode 2 is, right, we're going. I'm looking forward to getting to talk about The Harvest.
What really happens by the end of The Harvest, and I don't think you can tell in this episode, is by the end, the regulars are all interacting as if they've known each, like as if those actors have worked together for years and years. Whereas here we're getting the first sort of, oh, hi, I'm Buffy. You know, you don't have to hang around with all those sort of things. By the end, they're all talking in shorthand. They're all cracking jokes together. You know, Giles is signed to the camera saying we're all doomed and all of this. Yeah, I mean, confident. That's my one word for Welcome to the Hellmouth, is that it just exudes confidence, and it's not something that Buffy ever loses, I don't think.
What's surprising about this show is it was a mid-series replacement for another show that got cancelled.
What was that?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I should have looked it up, but that's why it's only 12 episodes.
I see, because it would have been 24 or whatever.
They needed to fill this 12-week slot. So they greenlit Buffy and they were like, okay. And what's really, really funny to me is I heard Martyn, who becomes a producer on series 2. She said to her mum, oh, I've got a great job. And the mum was like, oh, you know, what is it? And she said, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And her mum said, don't worry, dear. You'll do better next year.
Oh, and I've got to say, I really am looking forward to talking about Martyn involvement.
Yeah.
Because she makes this show dark as Dracula's underpants at times. Seriously, if people think it's Joss Whedon that takes this show to dark places, it's Noxon. And I do think there's a cut as Jane Spencer comes in as well, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Fantastic scriptwriter and producer. Having so many strong creative female voices in the show was a huge strength for Buffy. That's unusual for TV at the time as well.
Yeah. Yeah, Joss Whedon's whole approach was he wanted to elevate women in the industry, I guess. And I remember hearing an interview with him. It was around the time the Avengers came out. Someone asked him, why do you keep writing strong female characters? And he said, because I keep getting asked that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's evident here. And it's not surprising to me that he wrote the best live action depiction of the Hulk, because I think you could draw parallels between Angel and Angelus and Bruce Banner and the Hulk.
I watched Black Widow recently, okay, and that's a very female-focused Marvel film.
Yeah.
And it really surprised me because even today, I think there are strong women in genre films and television, but it's not really the focus still. You know, and if anything, Jodie Whittaker's Doctor Who has proven that we've still got a long way to go with a lot of people.
I think because a lot of it is led by marketing, right? And marketing ruins everything. So a lot of marketing is buzzwords. It's we need diversity, we need this, but nobody actually focuses on just making a good, compelling character. That's what we need now moving forward with the industry. We need somebody just to come along and write a good, compelling character. Remove all the buzzwords. Give us a strong, compelling character like Buffy, and people will watch it.
And the joy of this is we have strong, compelling female characters like Buffy and Cordelia and Willow and Anya and Dawn. You know, I mean, the list goes on and on. This show is doing it for women in a way that all shows should be. Bloody compelling, those characters, aren't they?
Yeah.
And that's all you need, really. I think it's to win over the skeptical part of the audience that are saying, you know, female-centered shows. No, just create a really interesting show with really compelling characters. I think that's how you do it. That's an obvious thing to say, but
And also, it doesn't do strong female characters at the detriment to the male characters. Whereas a lot of shows that try and do a strong female, they will have the male be a bumbling idiot. But here, yeah, every character is strong and compelling, and every character is treated with the same reverence as any other character. And although it's called Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it is an ensemble piece about all the characters, and we go on a journey with all the characters. And I think we need someone like Joss Whedon to come along now and do something great like this.
Shake it up.
With less bullying behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think I don't think you get away with that now. But what's great is as well, I say what's great, given what I'm about to say to you, you might not think it is great, but there is such a huge amount of strong women in this show. We can kill them off as well and still have so Jenny Calendar, Joyce Summers, Tara. I don't think I'll ever forget those deaths. They're some of the most memorable television moments ever. And it isn't just the woman we kill. Like we said, Jesse in the first episode, like, you know, he dies as well. But yeah, just for putting a woman at the heart of this and capturing the imaginations of the entire television audience. Well, I think Welcome to the Hellmouth has done a pretty good job.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Joe, I think that's where we'll leave it this week. Thanks for joining me, and thanks for listening at home. We will be back next week when we talk about The Harvest.